Hello ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners. My name's Dan. Welcome back to another PAP Reports. Today is Tuesday 28th of April 2020. Today we start with some additional information on top of the story from yesterday's PAP Reports regarding sex offenders being removed from the offenders register after asking the police. Well, I was sent an article dated the 3rd of January this year, which was before I started the PAP Reports. This article's headline is that nearly 3/4 of sex offenders have been removed from the register after asking the police. The first paragraph of this report, which I'm going to link to in the description, says nearly 3/4 of sex offenders on the official register have been allowed to remove themselves from the list by asking police. This information was revealed after a Freedom of Information request by the Daily Mail. Out of the 36 forces that responded to the request in England and Wales, shows that only 363 out of 1,288 requests to be removed were denied by the police between 2016 and 2018. Now that's a 72% success rate for paedophiles, including people who have been jailed for raping young children. Sickening for me was that the data revealed my local force, Merseyside Police, had a near 100% approval rate for people wanting to be removed from the register. Although the police force themselves said that applications were most likely to come from those who had been fully compliant with their registration requirements. Detective Superintendent Sue Coombs from Protecting Vulnerable People said, anyone who applies to be removed from the sex offenders register must have been on it for at least 15 years following initial notification on release from custody for the relevant offence. This is due to a change in national procedure. Procedure, an established way of doing something. I go through a procedure every morning. I wake up, let the dogs out, put the kettle on, have a piss, wash my hands and my face, make a coffee and go and sit down to drink it. But that doesn't mean I can't change my procedure if it's not working or if there is a flaw in my procedure. Sometimes I need a piss before the dogs go out. So this is a procedure, not a law. And as such, it would appear the decision to allow this is one that has simply been made because, I don't know, it's easy? Because it's against someone's human rights? What about the rights of the people that have been affected? I don't believe it is against human rights to stay on a register. If it is, then surely all of us who have a criminal record can simply go and ask for that record to be wiped after 15 years, as it's against our human rights, surely. It can't be okay for the worst of our society and not okay for the rest of us. Sue Coombs continued, we take this issue very seriously and the application to have a name removed is not granted simply because it has been made. We have a robust review system which involves checking a range of offender management systems on Merseyside and nationwide to ensure that the individual concerned has been compliant with the terms of the registration requirements and are assessed as no longer posing a risk to the public. The system was changed in 2011 after 2 sex offenders claimed it was unfair to be kept on the register indefinitely as it infringed on their human rights. As a result, offenders placed indefinitely on a register can apply to be taken off after 15 years. According to the College of Policing, the UK has some of the toughest powers in the world to manage registered sex offenders, with low levels of reoffending. Not very good at managing sex offenders in their ranks though. There may or may not be low levels of reoffending, but what is clear is the amount of people that are turning to this depraved way of life. Emily Constantus, CEO of the Safeguarding Alliance, said, in theory, the management of the sex offenders register works very well, but in practice, the system heavily relies on the honesty of the sex offender to tell the truth when reporting their circumstances. And as we know, we can all trust sex offenders. Unfortunately, this leaves a grey area in the system that allows a sex offender if they wish to manipulate and dictate their own outcome. This, coupled with a lack of current policing resources and often fragmented communication between all agencies, leaves the system not fit for purpose. If we are to have a register that truly protects most vulnerable members of society, there cannot be room for error. As it stands, we do not feel that current policy relating to the management of sex offenders represents the practice that is being undertaken. She continued, after speaking with a number of survivors, their immediate concern is once an offender has successfully applied to be removed from the register, they feel that no authority is monitoring them and this leaves them free to reoffend. This leaves not only all previous survivors open to immediate risk, but also places risks to others in the community. Now, I know that's a horrible topic to start this report with, and I apologise for that, but it is one of importance, and it leads me on to the next story, which is unfortunately related to the first. In PAP Reports on the 10th of February, we spoke about supply teacher 27-year-old Jonathan Clayton, who managed to get a job in a school just months after a pupil at another primary school had accused him of touching them. He was charged, but the Crown Prosecution Service decided not to proceed with the case, and details of the allegations were not shared with his new employer. He went on to molest 6 more pupils, aged 7 to 11, at the school that he moved to. Well, Clayton has now been jailed for 8.5 years for sexually assaulting 6 primary school pupils, not suspended. Clayton from Carlton, Stockton-on-Tees, was found guilty of 13 counts of sexual assault following a trial at Teesside Crown Court in February. The trial heard that Clayton had a sexual interest in young girls and used opportunities in the classroom to touch them inappropriately, watch them dress and help them get changed, even though they were old enough to do it themselves. Richard Bennett, prosecuting, told the court these girls were very young, with an age range between 7 and 11. Their experiences left them feeling creeped out and very uncomfortable. Clayton denied the offences, saying there was nothing sexual about his behaviour, but admitted he did give the children hugs, help them to get dressed and let them sit on his knee. At the sentencing on Monday, Clayton also received an indefinite sexual harm prevention order and was placed on the sex offenders register for life. What's the point of giving them life on a register if they can come off after 15 years? Absolutely sickening. Clayton was described after the trial by Detective Constable Gillian Gowling from North Yorkshire Police as a very manipulative individual who used his trusted position as a teacher to touch these very young and vulnerable girls for his own sexual gratification. An NSPCC spokeswoman said this is a horrifying case in which the offender exploited the trust that a number of pupils had placed in him. Fortunately, their bravery has helped to expose Clayton as a predator, and it is vital that all continue to receive available support to recover. Well, I guess that providing Clayton lies well enough to the police, he'll be off the register while the victims are still relatively young. I'm sure that won't mess them up at all, will it? Hampshire police have said they will no longer chase reckless teens on motorbikes over concerns for their safety. The statement comes after a group of youths have been seen using Hollybrook Cemetery in Bassett, Southampton, as a place to take their motorbikes off-roading. A spokesperson for the force explained that there have been incidents in which both members of the public and police have been knocked down by motorcyclists in the Southampton West area. They said officers are often unable to pursue in the circumstances due to the dangers that the motorcyclist poses to themselves, to the police officers behind them, and any members of the public in the vicinity. As such, Hampshire police will not authorise a pursuit under these circumstances. But surely that's likely to happen anyway. If these kids are ragging their bikes around in areas where there's likely to be pedestrians, I mean, it's not like they're cycling normally through a town centre, like Deliveroo riders, is it? One resident of Springfield Road said that the incidents have become more frequent during the coronavirus lockdown. She said it is becoming a huge problem in the area. You see the boys 3 up on one bike with no helmets chasing around the roads. I've seen a bike riding across the graves at the cemetery in the middle of the afternoon. They're disrespectful and dangerous. And it's more than once. You hear them ragging down all of the roads around here, then through the cemetery before heading up to the woods, and they trash it. It gives motorcyclists a bad name. It's only a handful of kids, she said. Now, I guess if they can't catch them to find them, what's the point? I mean, let's just stick with those who are a less danger to the public and find them instead. I don't see why they're not using their drones to follow these kids on motorbikes, rather than using them to spot people who are doing nothing wrong. An Essex man was left with serious facial injuries after an arrest by Essex police last month. 25-year-old Frank Jipp from Ongar was arrested by Essex police, responding to a collision in Queensway Chip in Ongar, and was subsequently charged with several offences after it was alleged he had bitten and coughed at police. Jipp's mother said that he had suffered a broken jaw during the arrest on Saturday, March 28th, but police nor the IOPC have confirmed if his jaw was broken. However, they did say that he sustained a serious injury. The IOPC has actually handed the investigation back to Essex Police's Professional Standards Department. I suppose it's easier to cover up from within the force itself. An IOPC spokesperson said, Having considered the referral from Essex Police, we decided the incident should be investigated by the Forces Professional Standards Department. Given the severity of the injury sustained, an investigation is required to consider whether the force used was necessary and proportionate in the circumstances. Should, during the course of the investigation, the force identify any misconduct, or should a complaint be made, the force are required to refer the matter to us. Otherwise, they must simply send a copy of their investigation findings to us for review. Jip is due to appear at Chelmsford Magistrates Court on Wednesday, June the 10th, charged with 2 counts of common assault against an emergency worker, theft from a shop, possession of cannabis, driving without due care and attention, failing to provide a specimen, and using threatening behaviour. Now, I've said it before, if someone breaks the law, then they should pay the price. I will never change that stance. The problem is when people are left with serious injuries after an arrest. You have to ask why. Seeing as our police are supposed to be some of the most highly trained and efficient in the world, how does someone end up with a possible broken jaw without excessive force being used against them? Now for something I find incredibly frightening and something that I think you should all worry about too. The Mail Online has reported recently that judges are being told to stop using beyond reasonable doubt and are to ask jurors if they're satisfied that they're sure instead. Finding someone guilty beyond reasonable doubt is the standard of proof required to find someone guilty of an offence in British law. But after more than 2 centuries of this system working without too many issues, it suddenly appears that jurors may not quite understand what beyond reasonable doubt means. After more than 200 years, and they still don't know. Instead, official guidance for the judiciary is to tell jurors that they must be satisfied so that they are sure a defendant is guilty before they can convict them. This change follows concerns that many of those called to do jury service do not understand how certain they must be to convict, thus risking miscarriages of justice. The Judicial Office says judges may adapt their language to avoid difficulties some jurors have with the phrase reasonable doubt. I would have to say then, if that's the case, that every trial for the last 200 plus years needs to be looked into to ensure that there have not been miscarriages of justice. Surely. How can you say we're changing it now so we don't risk miscarriages of justice when it's been used for so long and is the standard? You know, let's face it, if you don't know what beyond reasonable doubt means, should you really be deciding the future of anyone? Professor Penny Derbyshire of Kingston Law School wrote, "I have long argued that the word sure should be eliminated from the jury direction on beyond reasonable doubt. All it does is confuse jurors and send some jurors looking for absolute proof, which is impossible. There is plenty of evidence that it confuses jurors." Adrian Keane, Emeritus Professor of Law at City University of London, said we should jettison both beyond reasonable doubt and sure in favour of a better description of the criminal standard of proof. Of a replacement, he added, it is not enough that they think the accused is probably guilty or very probably guilty, that they don't have to be absolutely certain, but that if they have a real doubt rather than a doubt based on an extremely remote possibility, they should acquit. Now, this whole lockdown issue we're faced with at the moment is a confusing mess for us all. You know, we the public have been told by chief constables that we should know what we're doing by now, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. But police, still, after 5 weeks, don't even know themselves. Now, I know there are people who are genuinely taking a piss, meeting up in large groups, for example, but there are others who are doing no harm to anyone. Maybe sitting in an empty field or sitting on a bench to catch their breath, but are being pounced upon by overzealous PCs and PCSOs keen to keep up their daily quota of fines. And although some people think that I've been trying to get people to flout the law here on this channel, it's absolutely not the case and not what I want. If people use their brains, they can safely go about their business without interacting with people or causing a safety concern. But there are those who simply don't care about it, and it's those who are making it harder for the rest of us. For example, 10 people were stopped recently travelling 250 miles in 2 cars from London to climb Mount Snowdon. An angler travelled 100 miles for a fishing trip, although I still don't see the problem with fishing, as you're generally several metres away from anyone else anyway. But travelling 100 miles to do it is a bit stupid. A man from Liverpool telling the police that he's driving to Manchester because the shops are better. 30 people drinking and apparently kissing at a funeral of a friend, writing on their social media pages, "Fuck your social distancing." Now, although I don't agree with not being able to say goodbye to a loved one by blatantly pissing the police off, these people are making it harder for the rest of us. If they had attended and stayed 2 metres apart, as difficult as it may have been, they could all have said their goodbyes and the police wouldn't really have had much to say about it. There's even been reports of a woman who invited people to her home in North Wales for a morale boost and live streamed it on the internet, with another report of police being called to a house in Widnes in Cheshire 30 times in 1 month for breaching the gatherings part of the legislation and ignoring other advice. Now, these are people who are making things difficult for those of us who are simply trying to live our lives within the restrictions imposed upon us. Although much is only advice from the government and police, I do try to encourage people to social distance when going about their business. The legislation says no gathering of more than 2 people, but then says you can be near other people if you observe 2 metre rule. To me, that does not stop people gathering together, provided they're 2 metres apart, and the police allowing some funerals to go ahead recently, providing they observe that rule, proves a point. Or does it? Well, with police urging the government to provide more clarity over coronavirus lockdown rules, which make no sense, maybe it doesn't prove the point I thought it was. In fact, I think it proves that many police simply don't know how to use common sense anymore. Ken Marsh, chairman of the Met Police Federation, said the force needed clearer guidance over what is and what isn't allowed during lockdown. He says, why is it okay to queue with hundreds outside of B&Q, but not to sit on a blanket in a park well away from other people? It makes no sense whatsoever to my colleagues, and I doubt whether it makes any sense to the public. We, the police, are the fall guys for not properly enforcing the lockdown on one hand, and on the other, doing too much to enforce it, depending on who you are listening to. The government needs to get a grip and issue straightforward advice, which is where common sense would come in. Surely, people sitting in a park, resting in isolation or at least several metres from anyone else is not actually going to be contributing to the spread of any virus. You're in a wide open space, no hard surfaces for germs or viruses to live on to be transferred to others, but standing in queues to go into B&Q is going to be a cesspit of germs and viruses. Even when you get inside, there are going to be hard surfaces everywhere that hundreds of people could have touched. If I was the police, I know which situation I would take more interest in. Let people go to the park. Send some PCSOs, not to issue FPNs, but to walk around and simply remind people to be socially distanced from other groups. At the moment, we're all in an open prison having committed no crime. When you lock people up who are innocent, they get resentful. The Metropolitan Police Federation said, despite its assertions to the contrary, the government was sending out mixed messages around the shutdown. The Police Federation chairman Ken Marsh questioned the wisdom of allowing DIY stores to reopen. He said police officers are on the front line of combating the coronavirus crisis. Yeah, that's debatable. We need clear and ambiguous laws, guidance and communication from the government around what the public can and can't do, what is essential and what isn't. If officers are confused about this, then so will the public be. But do you know what? It's okay to punish the public for being confused, isn't it? No, but we simply have to suck it up and accept it when the police are confused and make mistakes. Okay, makes perfect sense. The Scottish Parliament's Equalities and Human Rights Committee is gathering views to inform an inquiry into the effects of the virus and the response to it by the Scottish Government and other public bodies over equality and human rights. Its inquiry will seek to identify which groups and individuals are disproportionately affected by COVID-19 and the response to the pandemic. Views on what the Scottish Government and other regulatory or oversight bodies need to do to ensure that actions taken minimise the negative effects on equality and human rights are sought to inform the committee's scrutiny. Ruth Maguire, MSP, said, "Everybody's lives have changed immeasurably as a result of this pandemic. We are acutely aware, however, that some groups are experiencing disproportionately negative impacts of the virus and some of the responses to it. For example, we have heard reports that individuals from particular ethnic minorities are being hospitalised at higher rates than the general population, while women and young people are among those most exposed to increased risk as they are disproportionately likely to be key workers. Meanwhile, women, children, older and disabled people are among the most impacted by the lockdown restrictions due to the lack of support available. The purpose of this inquiry is to ensure that hard-fought rights are uppermost in decision-makers' minds when responding to this crisis. Our call is open-ended to enable us to monitor the ongoing equalities and human rights impact so that steps can be taken to protect those most in need. The committee acknowledges that this is a fast-moving situation and so is keen to hear what issues need to be addressed urgently and those that it will need to be monitored and reviewed in the medium to longer term. And now for something non-COVID related. LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ plus campaigners have been kicking up a storm here in Merseyside recently after 2 Merseyside town halls decided to fly a flag outside which was branded as transphobic. I mean, it's okay to fly the innies, outies and in-betweeners flag, although that has nothing to do with heterosexuals, but of course that's fine, isn't it? The flags outside the town halls were raised to mark International Women's Day, which took place on Sunday, March the 8th. A message on the flags read, "Woman, noun, adult human female," which is a statement of fact, not a dig at anyone. Although campaigners from LGBTQ+ groups said the flags were a hostile, transphobic dog whistle. At the time, Adrian Harrop, a GP and LGBTQ+ activist from Liverpool, tweeted the council to raise his concerns surrounding the flag. He tweeted, "Hi, at Sefton Council, the flag you're flying at the moment is a hostile transphobic dog whistle." It was later revealed the flags were requested by supporters of the campaign group Standing for Women, a pressure group which maintains that only people born as women can be called women. The group came forward in a statement on their website that supporters from Sefton had asked the local authority to fly the flags as a sign of support of women across their regions and across the world. The group has come under fire in the past from campaigners for transgender rights who have labelled the group as transphobic and discriminatory. I mean, that's rich coming from a group of people who won't allow anyone who's not LGBTQ to be able to celebrate their sexuality. One Twitter user, Janet Pontin, added, "So sad to read this. How can woman, as described in the dictionary, possibly be offensive to anyone? As a woman, I'm devastated that you have done this. Do my feelings mean nothing?" Well, I'm afraid they don't. Feelings only matter if you're from a minority group these days. An email to Sefton Council's Chief Executive Dwayne Johnson asked the authority to fly the flags to show solidarity towards all women, and it would not cost any council public money to produce. Once the flags were flown outside Bootle and Southport Town Hall and met with angry backlash, the Freedom of Information revealed the Mayor's office decided to take them down after discussions with the council's communications team and Mr Johnson. Absolute pussies, pandering to a hypocritical bunch of screaming Marys because it has to be about them and no one else. Well, I hate to say it, the world is not just inhabited by your 100 plus recently made up names. Men and women still exist, and we all have the right to be proud of who we are, just as you do. So get over it. As for councils giving these ridiculous claims that the flag was transphobic, any weight by taking them down is a disgrace to equality, especially as they have no issues putting up rainbow flags. Big thank you to Patreon supporters: Adi, Audrey, Bill, Carl, Chris, Copwatch UK, Danielle, Dave, Dean, Holly, Ian, Jay, Marty Ladd, Mr Mina, Peter, President Trump, Rich, Savas and Stephen. Your support is really helping me to continue providing you with this daily content. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.